Recording in progress.
Good morning. We're starting the parak and Daf Tzadi Ches Amud Beis. In the middle of Tzadi Ches Amud Beis, we're learning as a schus for Shlema Filan Chaya Baserach. Tzful Yom U'Mechus Kippur. We're going to get to delve into inyanim of Tuma and Einin, different things that hassle someone from becoming part of from doing avodah. But this Mishnah is going to talk about, rather than whether you can or cannot do avodah, about whether a kohen is entitled to get his share of the different parts of the basar that go to a kohen. A chatas, for example, or an asham, all of the meat goes to the kohen. The minchas, they go to the kohen. Even by Ishlamim, there are certain parts that go to a kohen, the chaz of a shoik. So, but it doesn't just go willy-nilly to any kohen who happens to be around, picks it up. There's a whole system of mashmairis that, Masakin 24 mashmairis, 24 groups of kohanim. They're divided up into 24 groups, and each one of those groups was entitled to the basar, to the chalukah in the Beis Hamikdash for 2 weeks of each year, and even within that mishmaris, it was divided to a Beis Av, that certain kahanim were entitled each day of that mishmar. They divided up the mishmar into 7 groups that each one was entitled to get the basar, the chalukah for that day. But not every kohen, even if it was part of the mishmar and it was his proper day, sometimes he was disqualified from his right to get his share. That's what we're going to be talking about. So Tful Yom U'Mechus Kippurim. A Tful Yom is somebody who became Tameh. It wasn't a Tful Yom. It's not so. It's somebody who.
Morning.
Good morning, Dovi.
Morning.
It's someone who became Tameh, and he was Taivel, but he still has to wait till the end of the day for his Tumah to go away, where he's allowed to touch, or where he's allowed to eat, for example. He's not going to be Metam anymore, but a Tful Yom, for example, is not allowed to eat Truma or Karcher. He still retains Tumah to the extent that he's usher in Truma, which is pretty sensitive to Tumah, and certainly to Karcher, which is even more sensitive to Tumah. Mechus Kippurim is someone who's even later than that. There's certain types of Tumah, for example, a Metzaira or a Zav or a Zava, that even after he toiveled and he waited for the nightfall, he still has to bring a carbon. Such a person is less tummy, but kachim is so sensitive to tumah that he's also going to be usher in kachim. So those people, ein chelkim bekachim, then none of them are going to be allowed to. None of them are going to be allowed to get their share of kachim. Both the Tful Yom and Chosek Kippurim, and certainly someone who's fully tamei, are not going to be. They're not allowed to do avodah. They're considered. They're not, certainly, if they're not allowed to touch kachim, they're not allowed to go into the Beis Hamikdash and do avodah. And they also are not going to get the chalukah of the kachim, like what we were talking about, the chelik that they're entitled to. To eat it at night. That means, even though when nightfall comes, a Tful Yom is going to be tar, but since during the day, at the time that they were dividing up the meats, the basar, he wasn't qualified, he's going to be disqualified even to get the chelik at night. Einin, someone who's an Einin. So an Einin is not tamei. An einin is someone who had a mace. He had someone who was a Karev who died. So for the first day, we're going to see not necessarily just for the first day, but midaraisa for that day, he has a din of einin. He's not allowed to do avodah. So he's negeya. He could touch kachim. He's not going to be metama kachim. He's unlike the Tfil Mechusuk Kippurim that are going to be metama kachim before they become tar. The einin is not at all tame, but so he could touch it. Ve'einin makriv, but he's not midaraisa. The Torah says that he's not allowed to do avodah. Ve'einin choylek lechol le'erev, and also they're not going to be able to get their share when the evening comes. Bali mumin, bein bali mumin oivrim, bein bali mumin kavuin, chalkin va'oichlin. They can get a share and they eat. Avaloi makrivim, but they can't be makriv. Now, seems to be different than everything else, right? We're saying that it can't be makriv, but it sounded like by the einin who's not metama that he can't do avodah, but he still gets a chelik. Balmum can't do avodah, and nevertheless he gets a chelik. So now the Mishnah says a rule. Kol she'enu roy la'avodah ein chelik b'basar. Kol she'en lei b'basar ein lei. I'm sorry. So kol she'enu roy la'avodah ein chelik b'basar. Whoever is not able to do the avodah during the day can't get a chelik of the basar. What about the bali mum? So as we're going to see, the bal mum is a direct pasuk that excludes bal mum. Says that the bal mum has a different status, that they're going to be able to be take a chelik even though they can't be mak. But the Mishnah continues, "V'chol she'en lo b'basar, ein lo ba'irus." In addition to the kohanim being entitled to the basar, to eat the basar from, for example, a chatas, they also are entitled at the end of the week. They would divide up all the iris from the animals, from the karbanos, and they'll be allowed to keep them. So if they weren't able to get the basar because they weren't able to do the avodah, then they don't get the iris. Afilu, even someone who is unable to do the avodah because he was tamei b'shas zrikas dam. He was a tamei at the time of doing the completion of the avodah when you get the kapara. V'tar b'shas hekter chalavim, but it becomes nightfall, and they didn't finish the carbon because they weren't makrav the emurim. As we know, the hakravas emurim is not ma'akav, and the zrika is when you get the kapara. So someone who was tamei at the time of the zrika, and then he becomes tar at night, and they still haven't been makav the emurim, it's still ain't a chaylik b'basar. He's still not going to be considered a chaylik b'basar. Shnema, we have to read the pasuk on the side because this Mishnah has some mistakes in it. Hamakrav es dam hashlam v'sachelim ne'aron lo yisi shoyk hayamin lamana. Someone who's makrav, the person who's makrav the carbon, to him it's going to be the chelik, the shoyk hayamin lamana. He's going to get his chelik, but only if he's makrav. If he's not makrav, he's going to be excluded from getting his chelik. So, since the kapara comes from the zrikas dam, and he was tamei at the time of the zrika, he is going to be excluded. Zak the Gemara. Minohani mili. Well, so we brought a pasuk for the general rule that someone who can't be makrav is excluded from getting his chelik. The Mishnah is going to ask, how do you know specifically a tful yaim? And mechusuk kippurim that are partially tummy, they're not fully tummy. Minani mili, amar shlakish to amar kra kainam chata oiso yechalena. Kainam chata yechal she'enim chata eina yechal. So a kain who can do which really means the zrikas dam, he can eat from the carbon, but someone who's not going to do the who doesn't do the zrikas dam is not going to be eichel. So the Gemara klalahu are mishmar kula de emachat and va'eichlen. What about you're making it the way you were attaching the pasuk is that only the kohen who actually did the avodah gets the basar from that carbon. But we know that the halacha is that it's not just the kohen who did it; everyone from that day. We have the Beis Av, but the concept is the same. It's the Kahanim that are entitled to that day's basar. It goes to all of them. It doesn't just go to the one who actually did the avodah. So tomorrow, royal lechiti kamrin. We don't mean that they actually did the avodah, rather someone who is capable of doing the avodah. So that means anyone from the Mishmeres who is not a Tful Yoim or a Mechus Kippurim, that they're not able to do the Avodah. In fact, what about cotton who is not able to do? He's not can't do a cotton can't do Avodah, and nevertheless they eat. It's true a cotton can eat, but what we're talking about here is not who can eat from the basar. We're not talking about being precluded from eating. We're talking about who's entitled to their portion. Certainly, a cotton can get from his father. If his father gets a chelik, his father can give to him, or anyone can give to him. But the cotton is not lined up at the distribution. He's not entitled to a portion. So only someone who is capable of doing the avodah gets a portion, but someone who's not capable is not. So that will exclude cotton. Cotton can't get a chelik, as well as a Tful Yom or Mechus Kippurim who are tamei and therefore couldn't do the avodah. What about a balmum that's not capable of doing the avodah? Right? The balmum is not allowed to do avodah, and they get a section. The Gemara balmum rachmana rabia. There's a special riboy of a balmum that he gets a section. Kol zacha b'kahanim l'rabis balmum. Says kol zacha b'kahanim. That's coming to be marba something, so we say it's the balmum. In fact, the Gemara ve'ema kol zacha l'rabis tful yoyim. We said it's tful yoyim and a mechutz kippurim who are incapable of doing the avodah, therefore they're excluded from getting a chelik. We say the pasuk of Hakayin Hamachata Oisa Yechlena is memayit them. But we're saying the pasuk that says Kol Zachar is being marba a balmum. Mehechatesa. Why? How do we know to exclude the Tful Yoim and to include the balmum? So the Gemara, Mistabra balmum havalei l'rabuye, makes more sense to include a balmum shechein oichel, because a balmum is allowed to eat. A Tful Yoim is not allowed to eat. It's not just that he can't do the avodah, but a Tful Yoim is not allowed to eat. Is not even allowed to eat if someone would give him. So therefore, he can't even get the chalukah. But a balmum is not tamei. He just can't do avodah, but he's allowed to eat. So therefore, even though he can't be mechata, we're going to be marba. So tomorrow, adra Tful Yoim havel elrubuya the lo'orta mechse chazi. Maybe I would say fakert. A Tful Yoim, all he has to do is wait for the night to come, and he's going to become fully capable of not just eating kachim, but also doing avodah. So he fits more into hamachata. While it's true that the balmum is able to eat even now, but at night the Tful Yom is going to leapfrog him. The Tful Yom is going to be able not just to eat, but also to do avodah. So at this point, when it comes time to do the avodah, he's not able to do it. That's what we care about. We care about his chitui. The Torah says a kind of machata, and he's really not a machata. While a balmum, although he can't do the avodah, he can eat right now. So at least right now, he has more of a ability. He's closer than the Tful Yom. So therefore, the riboy is coming to be marba the balmum. So Rabbi Yosef has a different way of learning why we include the balmum and we exclude the Tful Yom. Rabbi Yosef Ama Mechti Ma Yechalena Yechalkena. What Ma Yechalena Yechalkena? Lichter Rachman Yechalkena. Um, why does the Torah say when it says Yechalena? It means Yechal Kena. So let the Torah say that. Why did the Torah just say Yechal Kena? We're saying that he has to be able to get a chelik. Why say Yechalena? Say Yechal Kena. I'm sorry. Why? Not that he's able to do that. We're saying that when the time comes, he doesn't get a chelik, but he can eat from it, right? So why are we saying that he's going to be able to eat? Whoever's does the chita, he will be able to eat. We're not trying to exclude him from eating. We're saying that it's coming to exclude him from getting a chelik. So let the Torah say that. Ma yechelena. So why does the Torah use the lashon of yechelena to say he gets a chelik? Shma mino roy la'achila chelik she'en roy la'achia ein a chelik. It's coming to say that there's a little bit of a mashmoyis in the pasuk that coming to include bedavka the balmum who is always able to eat it. That's Rabbi Yosef's limit. He says not from a svara, but from the Riboy Hakra, from the way the Torah said. Boy Rish Lakish. Rish Lakish asked a question. Balmum v'hu tamei mahu sheyechalkul. What's the din of a balmum who's also tamei? We said a balmum is excluded from the pasuk of a machat oisai. What happens if the balmum is also tamei? What do we say? Kivin lechazi v'rachmana rabia loishna mali tamei mali balmum. Do we say, listen, this person was not really supposed to be able to get a chelik from the pasuk. The pasuk says hakayna machat oisai, and balmum is not someone who could do the avodah. And nevertheless, the Torah said he could do it, he could get a chelik in spite of that. So even if he's tamei, so there's an additional reason why he can't. But he's anyway a balmum who wasn't able to do the avodah in the first place. So the fact that it became tamei doesn't stop him from doing the avodah anymore. And the Torah said a balmum can get. So it's irrelevant. He still gets. He still is going to get his chelik. Or do we say no? The only reason why the balmum was allowed to from either one of the svaras, either because we said it's more likely to be a balmum rather than a tful yaim, or because, like the way Rabbi Yosef said, because the Torah used the lashon of yechlena to mean yechalkena, but it has to do with the fact that he's roy to eat, and if he becomes tamei, he lost his ability to eat, so therefore he also loses his chelik. It's a very interesting question. Like you would think, it's true he could eat out spamum, but he's also a tamei. A tamei we know can't eat. So you think it would be subsumed. It's irrelevant that he also is a balmum. But the Gemara is saying no. Maybe you'd say that once the Torah said it, balmum can get a chelik. It doesn't make a difference if he has an additional reason not to eat. He wasn't able to eat, not to do the avodah. He wasn't able to do the avodah anyway. Amarava Toshma. I'll bring you a rye. Kayin Gadol Makriv Einin. Kayin Gadol is allowed to bring his carbon even if he's an Einin. But right, a Kayin Gadol is an exception. Generally, a Kayin can't do the Avodah when he's an Einin, but a Kayin Gadol can. But he's not allowed to eat. He still is just like any other Einin, that he's not allowed to participate in the basar that goes to the Kehanim. And even at night, when he's no longer a full-fledged Einin, as we'll see, he doesn't get a chelik to eat. Shmamina. You see from here, Roy la'achila be'inan. You see that the Kain Gadol, even though he was really excluded, he's able to do the Avodah. But because he's not able to eat at night, when the time of the avodah, when the time that the avodah is being done, he is precluded from eating at that point because he's still an einin who's not allowed to eat, even though he could do avodah. That's the factor that we look at in deciding on whether he's going to get a chaluk. You see from here that the factor that says whether someone who gets a chalukah, not as whether they can eat at the time of the avodah. So just like the Kohen Gadol can't get a chelek afterwards because he couldn't eat, so to the Baal Mum, since he wasn't able to do, since he was not so too the other way around. I'm sorry. So a Baal Mum who's also Tame, since he at the time the avodah was done was not able to eat. A Tvul Yaim is not able to eat at that time, even though he's also Baal Mum. That we said there's a special heter for him, even though he can't do the avodah, he's not any better than the Kohen Gadol who can actually do the avodah. But nevertheless, his inability to eat puzzles him from getting chalukah. So too, the Tvul Yaim is going to be excluded. Boy Rabbi Ishi asks a very similar question. Tome bekarbanos tzibur mao sheyichalku. It's really the same question like we asked by Abamum. So this is someone who has a special heter to do the avodah, even though, or he's really similar to the Kohen Gadol. Tome bekarbanos tzibur mao sheyichalku like. Someone who is tame, that he's not able to eat, but he's able to do the avodah, just like the Kohen Gadol, who, when he's an einin, can do the avodah, even though he's not allowed to eat. So what about a regular kohen who's a tamei, but it's a carbon sibur, and a carbon sibur is hutra tuma is a dechuya for a carbon sibur. What's the din about him getting a chalukah? Just like the kohen gadol, he's able to do the avodah. Or is the main factor that we have to look at is whether you can participate in the eating, and he's not able to eat because he's a tame. In spite of the fact that there's a heter to do the avodah as a tame while you're for a carbon sibur, but that doesn't allow him to eat. So therefore, since he can't eat, quote, because he's tame, he's not going to be able to get a chelik even after he becomes tar. The same right like we said before from the Kohen Gadol. Okay. Now we're going to move on to the din of einin, right? A person, the day after he has a mace, he has a din. He's not allowed to do avodah when he's an einin. There's a lot of mitzvahs he can't. Right? He's precluded from doing all mitzvahs I say when he's an einin. But an einin is not tamid. So you say an einin negeya. The Mishnah said an einin is negeya ve'einin makriv. He can't do the avodah, but if he touches carbon, he's not metamet because he's not tamid. Is that true that an einin can touch kachim for a mini? Einin or mechusar kippurim, someone who's an einin or someone who's a mechusar kippurim, that he still has to bring his karbanos in order to be fully tar. Tzrichen tefila l'kaidish. They need to be title themselves before they can touch kachim. So this Mishnah in Chagiga is saying that there is a din tuma, or not a din tuma, but we're going to call midirabanan. The Chavim treat him as if he's tameh. As we're going to see in a minute, we're going to see soon. The reason for that is the Chavim are afraid that someone who is an einin, since he knows he can't eat kachim. The Torah says he can't do avodah and he can't eat kachim. That he's not going to be careful and he'll become tameh. So therefore, we said you have to do tefillah before you participate with kachim. But our Mishnah seemed to say we're not concerned about that. He said he could be negeya when he's an einin. Amar Rav Asi, Amar Rav Ami, Amar Rav Yechon, like kasha. Kam b'shetavel, kam b'shalei. No, what the Mishnah Chagiga that says that he needs tefillah, that means he's not allowed to touch it until he's taivel. But once he's taivel, he's allowed. But our Mishnah is talking about. I'm sorry. Our Mishnah is talking about before, after he could be touched after he was taivel. So the Mishnah Chagiga is talking about b'shaloi tavel. He wasn't taivel yet. So until he's taivel, he's also to even touch kachim. And our Mishnah that says that he's negeya is talking about after the tefillah. So what does it help for him to be toivel? It's still during the day of aninas, and he's going to just go right back on him and become asa. The Amar Rabba Bar Huna Einin Shetavel Aninosai Chayzeres Allah. Even after he does the tefillah, his aninus will come back to him. He has to be toivel at the end of the day, after his aninus goes away, because his aninus is just going to cause him to be usher to, for example, that he's not allowed to touch kachim. Zak the Gemara Lekasha. So we're really talking about a different thing. The issue is not whether he was toivel or not. The question is how this is all, like we said, a takanos chachamim, that a einin is treated as if he's tamei, but he's not actually tamei. And the reason for the takana is because we're worried that he's not going to be careful about becoming tamei, because he's anyway not allowed to eat or do the avodah. So it's going to depend. We're talking about the question, that which we said in our Mishnah. He's negeya. That's when he wasn't Mesiach Das. He was very careful. He was aware of the issue that if he's going to become tamei, it's going to make it that even after the Zman, he doesn't want to become tamei, because he knows he's not really tamei, even though he can't do avodah. He's going to require himself a tefillah afterwards. So he's being careful the whole time. So such a person could be negeya b'kachim. But the Mishnah Chagiga that says he needs tefillah is where he wasn't specifically careful. How can we say that he needs just a tefillah? If someone's Mesiach Das, if he's totally not careful, he could touch a mace, and a mace you need the mechatas of the paraduma, and you need to do it on the third day and on the seventh day. It's not just a tefillah. So how are we saying that all he does is tefillah? The Amar Rabbi Stoi Berebi Matan Amar Rabbi Yochanan has a chadas tzar chazash lishi shvi. If he's not careful, he needs more than just waiting for the nightfall. So, because he might have gone into a chapel with a mace. I grew up living on Avenue M, and Chaim Berlin was on Coney Island, and in between, on the way to walk to shul, there was that chapel on the corner of M and Coney Island. Now it's a daycare center, but it used to be a chapel, and we had to walk into the street. And I remember, like, I was a little kid, I was 7 years old, I was so excited. It was the only time I was allowed to walk in the street by myself. Without holding my father's hand, I was allowed to walk around the part of the oil. But if the guy is Mesiach Das, if the Kohen is being Mesiach Das from his Tumah, why aren't we concerned that he became a Tamei Tumas mace, which is not just enough to do tefillah? You need the full process to take away the Tumas mace. So about loy kasha. Hada asaf daite bitame mace. Hada asaf daite bitame sheretz. It could be that which we said he's negeya. That which we said in our Mishnah, that he's going to be careful that he's negeya. That's where he makes sure not to be Mesiach Das from that which you say we need tefillah. Let's put it this way. That which we said over there, Rabbi Destoi said that Yistoi Beremotim said that he needs Azor Shlishi Shvi. That's where he totally said, I'm a Kohen and I'm a Oinin, so I don't have to, the whole thing is not negeya for me. I'm not going to pay any attention. And he says, he's not watching anything. He'll become Tommy Tumas Mace. But the Mishnah Chagiga that says he needs tefillah, that will help him. That's someone who said, listen, I know I'm a Kohen, and he's not Mesiach Das from becoming Tomei. It's a strange thing to say he'll be Mesiach Das, because it's a law. A Kohen's not allowed to become Tomei Tumas Mace. So he said, I'm good, but this person said he was responsible. He said, I'm not going to become Tomei Tumas Mace. I'm still a Kohen, but Tumas Sheretz he wasn't so worried about, because he said, I can't do avodah anyway. So that person, all he needs is tefillah, and then he'll be able to do avodah. Sagt the Gemara, Tommy Sheretz, Tommy Ma'al Yehu, Her Shemesh Boy. So the Gemara asks, but what does it help for him to do tefillah? He still becomes a Tvul Yoim, and a Tvul Yoim can't do avodah. So what are you saying? He just needs tefillah. He also needs to wait for nightfall. V'oid, afilu truma nami. Additionally, if we're saying someone who was being careful about that he's not going to come Tomei Tumas Sheretz, I'm sorry, who wasn't being careful, he was allowing himself to come Tomei Tumas Sheretz, he shouldn't be allowed to eat truma. A Tomei Tumas Sheretz is the Mishnah had said in Chagiga that he's that he's not going to become, he doesn't need a true tefillah for truma, but if he's an einin. But why should there be an afkamina if we're saying that we're concerned that he's not going to be careful about sheretz? Sheretz is also not allowed to eat truma. So how are we going to answer how are we going to explain this tira? Rav Yirmiyah, ba'aymer nishmart midava hamitmani, v'loy nishmart midava hapislani. We're not talking about where he was bedafka careful about tomei mace, but not careful about sheretz. He said, I'm going to be careful about anything that would make me tomei, but not something that will make me a puzzle. A puzzle is somebody who can't eat himself, but has no ability to be metama. So that means something that's a reference to something that's only awesome, that's only a tumah d'Rabbanan. There's certain tumas, not the tumah sheretz. Obviously, a tumah sheretz is a tumah d'Oraisa, but a tumah d'Rabbanan, a tumah that the Chachamim imposed on him. They said you're treated as tumah if you do this. For example, if he doesn't wash his hands in the morning, or so that type of tumah, I think it's like let's say a mashka that could be to be metama, a kli, different tumas d'Rabbanan. So if he wasn't careful about the tumas d'Rabbanan, so that all he needs is a tefillah for that. He doesn't have to wait for nightfall. So that's what it means. That's what we mean that he said he just needs a tefillah, because we're not talking about a tumah sheretz. Is there such a thing that a person says, I'm going to be careful for one thing and not for the other? So I think we're only asking this question now, like we said, because Tomei Tumas Meis, a person knows Kain is also usher to be Metama Tumas Meis. But we're saying that this person had a very specific shmira that he was careful about. He was only careful about the Tomei Tumas d'Oraisa, but he wasn't careful about the Tumas d'Rabbanan. Do people really divide themselves like that? So the Gemara in Ba'atanya, and I'll bring you right. Ideo asal al roishai, or magrifa b'seichai. If the basket was still on his head, this is talking about someone who, and there was a magrifa, there was the kli that they used to shovel the figs, to move the figs, was inside of it. And he said, I'm paying attention that the sal shouldn't become tameh, but I was masir das from the magrifa. Hasal tar magrifa tameh. The sal is tar, and the magrifa, the shovel, is tameh. So, hasal, so, Zakta Gemara, the tamagrafil is sal. Why don't we say that since the shovel is tameh, it should make whatever is in the basket, it should make whatever's in it, or it should make the basket itself tameh. Zakta Gemara, ein kli metama kli. It's a kli generally is not metama another kli. Let it be metama what's inside of the kli, the peiros in the kli, and the mashmois is the Gemara seems to understand that it says alasal hasal tar v'magrifa tamei means also what's in the basket. It's only the magrifa that's tamei, but now what's in the basket. Amarava ba'omer shemartia midavar hamatama v'lo shemartia midavar hapaisla. Like we said, it's the same thing like we said before. He had in mind only those tumas that can be. I was being careful about the shovel that it shouldn't touch, that it shouldn't be um, something that it shouldn't be matama something else. So the I'm sorry. That means I was careful, even though I said that the shovel is tame. I made sure it didn't become tame to extent that it could be matama other things. So I wasn't careful that it itself shouldn't become tame. But I was careful that it shouldn't become tame to the extent where there's the sheni, shlishi, and shvi. So a sheni can be matama truma, a shlishi can be matama kachim. So I made sure it didn't become tame to be matama, that it would be to the level that it could be matama what's inside it. So you see that a person can differentiate. He could say, I'm careful only up to a certain extent of how tame it becomes. Igadol Mosa umatoy lekameder Rabbi bar Mamel. They asked this question about the stira between the Mishnah and Chagiga that says that a einin can be nageya, and the Mishnah that says that einin needs tefillah. Amalei lo shemiluhu adam Rabbi Yechon amarav hayachol shlishi al truma asa lechol umotali liga. Alma b'chiv av rabbanon ma'ila b'negiya le'avid rabbanon ma'ila. He says that the Chachamim were mechalik. They made a chiluk, they made a iser. That which we said that you need a shemira, that's only to the extent that it becomes possible that he's not allowed to eat it. But as far as being an ageya, that the Chacham were not misakin on. So the whole takana of the Chachamim that you need a tefillah, that they said that he has to make a tefillah in order to eat it, but they were never misakin that he can't touch it. So there's no the Mishnah says you need chagiga, but the Mishnah, even the Mishnah chagiga never said he can't touch. It's a new type of tefillah that wasn't needed for Negi. It was just needed to allow him to eat. That was the Takanas Chacham. Okay, we'll stop over here. Yeshakaya, thank you for your patience with